You could say we're big fans of Dell's latest XPS 13. We called it the perfect ultra-portable back in April, and we've loved that line since 2015. Well, Dell has managed to one-up itself already with the 2-in-1 version of the XPS 13, which is thinner, can rotate into different orientations, and honestly, it even looks better. It's not just a great convertible laptop, it's one of the best ultra-portables you can buy today, so much so that it's strong competition for the traditional XPS 13. I'll admit, I've been eager to test the XPS 13 2-in-1 ever since I got my hands on it a few months ago. It was one of those rare gadget love at first sight moments. Just by looking at it, you can tell that it's sleeker than the previous generation model and the plain XPS 13. It's impressively thin, tapering between 11 and 7 millimeters, and its rotating hinges now lie flat underneath the monitor. The last 2-in-1 had some ugly vertical hinges that made it look extra tall. Dell also did a fine job of reducing everything that separated the keyboard and the screen, which makes the laptop look cleaner overall. And yes, just to confirm, it also features a tiny 720p webcam sitting above the screen, not below like the last version. There's an air of sophistication around the XPS 13 2-in-1 that's kind of hard to put into words, but you'll notice it as soon as you feel it. Its unibody aluminum case feels strong and elegant, and even though it's slightly heavier than the traditional model, it still feels very light and easy to hold at 2.9 pounds. And like every 2-in-1 laptop, you can fold the screen into a tent formation or into a very large tablet. Dell's new hinge makes the entire process much smoother than before. It opens up easily and comes to a slight pause in laptop mode. All it takes is a slight push further to keep the screen going all the way around. The new 13.4-inch screen also looks gorgeous. It's a bit taller than before with a 16:10 aspect ratio, and it's available in 1080p and 4K variants. Both screens feature HDR and Dolby Vision support, which helps make supported video content pop off the screen a bit more by adding higher levels of peak brightness and more nuanced darks. The only downside is that there's no OLED option, but that's still pretty rare for 13-inch notebooks. You can really only find it on like the new XPS 13 Spectre. It's clear that Dell learned a lot from my issues with the last XPS 13 2-in-1. This model doesn't feel like a downgrade from the standard XPS 13 like it did before, where the design wasn't as sleek and it was significantly underpowered. Now the 2-in-1 is running the same 10th generation Intel processors as the traditional model. And because of that, Dell had to give up on its previous fanless design to add a new cooling system, but I think the trade-off is worth it. Another benefit to using Intel's latest 10th generation processors, the XPS 13 2-in-1 includes the company's updated Iris Plus graphics. It's kind of hit or miss for Overwatch. I saw frame rates between 40 and 60 FPS, sometimes a little higher. The gameplay is kind of all up in the air. It should be fine for casual games like Minecraft and The Sims, but maybe if you find a good run with Overwatch, you can still get a couple matches in. At the very least, it represents a significant leap ahead over any of Intel's previous integrated graphics. It's hard to knock a super thin laptop for not being able to play many games well. But then again, we've also seen ultra-portables this year like the ZenBook S13, which is even lighter than the XPS 13 2-in-1 and has dedicated NVIDIA graphics. You can also blame the new thinner case for the laptop's revamped maglev keyboard, which now features a shorter 0.7mm key travel, which is about half as much as the traditional XPS 13. Now hear me out, I was ready to scoff at this keyboard too, but then I actually used it. You still get a decent amount of feedback while typing, and it remains a far better experience than Apple's completely flat MacBook keyboards. Dell also spread the keyboard out wider with larger keycaps, so that it reaches the edges of the laptop. That makes for an almost desktop-like typing experience. The trackpad is also 19% larger than before, giving you more room for swiping around and multi-touch gestures. I found it to be very smooth and pretty responsive. I used the XPS 13 2-in-1 for the entirety of Microsoft's recent Surface event, and I had no issue banging out a 90-minute live blog and several hands-ons with it. The only potential issue was that my typing sounded extra loud during quieter moments, which wasn't the case with the standard issue XPS 13. The 2-in-1 also managed to survive 6 hours of that grueling Microsoft event without taking much of a battery hit. During our benchmark, which involves looping an HD video, it lasted an impressive 14 hours and 25 minutes. I've been using it for a few weeks now, and it's remarkable just how long it can last. It typically takes around 2 whole days of work before it needs to be recharged via its USB-C adapter. Thankfully, there's another USB-C port for accessories, along with a microSD card slot for handling photos. Now that I've had a decent amount of time with the XPS 13 2-in-1, I've made a surprising realization. I genuinely prefer it to the plain XPS 13. It looks and feels more attractive, its rotating screen makes it far more versatile, and I've grown to love the shallower keyboard. Both laptops also start at $999 with Core i3 processors, though I wouldn't recommend going with such an underpowered spec. As you start adding upgrades, the 2-in-1 ends up costing quite a bit more than the XPS 13. Our review unit, which featured a 10th gen i7 CPU, 16GB of RAM, and a 1080p screen, comes in at $1,597. A similarly spec'd XPS 13, meanwhile, goes for around $1,350. The choice comes down to how much having a convertible screen means to you. You can't really go wrong with either laptop, but honestly, I'd say you're better off with the 2-in-1's more modern design. HP's upcoming Spectre X360 revamp is also a decent alternative, and you can even add an OLED screen if you'd like. If you're in the market for a premium ultra portable this year, you've now got two very strong options from Dell. But while I've typically steered buyers towards a more traditional XPS 13, Dell has finally made the 2-in-1 a worthy sibling. Stay tuned to Engadget.com for all of our PC reviews, and if you dug this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel.